Welcome to Your Family's Health, the program that focuses on healthcare issues with unique and different modalities for taking charge of your health today. Experts talk weekly with our continuing roster of guests from around the country and right here in Nassau County to keep you up to date on the latest health issues and trends. Take care of your mind, body, and soul. Spend the next half hour with the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC, and get on the journey to better health.
Hello and welcome to Your Family's Health. My name is Dr. Jeanine Cook-Garard from the nursing department here at Nassau Community College. And today we're talking about dementia. Our guest today is Jennifer Fitzpatrick, a generation expert, gerontologist, and author of Cruising Through Caregiving, Reducing the Stress of Caring for Your Loved One. She is the founder of Generations Health Education, Inc., a full-service healthcare education organization, and an instructor with the Johns Hopkins University Certificate on Aging program. Jennifer, welcome to Your Family's Health on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. Welcome.
Hi, Janine. Thank you.
And it's so good to have you on just to talk about something that's so very common. Tell me, and if you can define for those that may not know, what is dementia?
Sure. So dementia is cognitive symptoms, and it can manifest with what probably most people think of when they think of dementia as short-term memory loss. So maybe forgetting what season it is, or that you had fruit and yogurt for breakfast. But it can be a lot more complicated than that. A lot of people that have dementia might have personality changes. So somebody that's always been very gentlemanly maybe is using a lot of bad language now. Some other symptoms might be poor judgment, so going out with the cold weather and maybe not wearing appropriate clothing. So different types of memory, cognition, poor judgment, maybe getting lost in somewhere that's familiar. So really dementia is symptoms.
So tell me, is dementia one category diagnosis, or does it arise from different issues?
So when somebody has dementia symptoms, what we want is for them to find out what's going on, what's causing those symptoms. So in worst case scenario, it might be you have some of these symptoms we just talked about, personality changes, judgment, memory loss. And you could very well go to your doctor and you find out that the reason that you're having these symptoms is because you are taking medicines that you're having side effects from. It could be a situation where you have a B12 deficiency. A lot of times for older adults, it could possibly be because you have depression, which a lot of people don't realize. If a good physician or nurse practitioner or your prescriber, your diagnostician doesn't find anything reversible, then they're going to start looking at, could this be something progressive and more serious like Alzheimer's disease or another one of the irreversible dementias?
So is this in stages, dementia? Is it early onset and then advanced dementia? Is it stages where we'll see the patient progress or person progress from an early onset to an advanced stage of it?
So assuming that it is an irreversible progressive dementia, like an Alzheimer's, frontotemporal, Lewy body, vascular, yes, you will see early stages, middle stages, late stages. If someone truly does have an irreversible dementia, again, Alzheimer's is the most common form, but any one of those irreversible dementias, it is gradual progression, and so we will see it get worse, and people who have one of these conditions sadly do pass away from them.
And how early in the literature do we see dementia occurring?
So most of the time, vast majority of dementia that we see is going to be in the older adult years, so in your 70s, 80s, 90s. But I think a lot of us really become concerned because we all probably know somebody who's had a situation where they have a loved one who maybe has a young onset type. So young onset would mean that the symptoms started to appear before age 65. So young onset, and they called it for a long time early onset, but now it's really called young onset. So young onset Alzheimer's disease. Lewy body dementia and frontotemporal dementia often occur or sometimes can occur in the 50s and the early 60s as well. But in the literature, like you asked, Janine, there actually have been incidences, although I hesitate to bring them up because I don't want to scare people. It's incredibly rare. But is it possible that it has happened in the 30s and 40s? I believe the earliest diagnosis was, I believe, someone around 29, but it's incredibly rare.
Does an individual who has dementia, do they realize that they are beginning to have memory losses? Do they self-diagnose, and is that what brings them to the health practitioner? Or is it their family member often that notices the memory lapses?
We do see both, but sadly, Janine, a lot of people, they might see it in themselves and they might excuse it away. And they think, well, I'm getting older. I know that there's a lot of brain changes that happen with the aging process, and that's quite true. You know, we might have a little bit more time. You go to the grocery store, you might forget milk. You went in for milk and you walk out with everything but milk, right? We've all done that.
Right.
But so that's nothing to worry about. But sometimes I think we say, oh, well, I'm getting older. It's probably nothing. But if you truly are having some of the symptoms we just talked about, I think a lot of people, there's the rare person that says, you know what, I'm going to go to the doctor. I'm going to address this head on. But a lot of people are very much in denial, and it does take a family member, a friend, sometimes even a colleague or somebody that knows you really well to say, listen, I'm a little concerned about you.
And is this dementia hereditary? If you had a mom or a father who had dementia, I'm thinking Alzheimer's type of dementia, is this something that is passed down?
So that's a great question, Janine. And actually, I talk about that in one of the chapters in Cruising Through Caregiving. With many of the dementias, there is a component where that is a risk factor. So let me give you an example. So for people who have had heart disease in their family, you know that that's a risk factor. And so you want to be mindful of that. But for most of us, if we have heart disease in our family, we want to be aware of it. But it doesn't mean you're definitely going to have a heart attack. It doesn't mean that. It's the same thing with most types of dementia. Now, one example that would be if you have a gene for, say, Huntington's disease, that would be different if you had the genetic testing and you know. Or there is an incredibly rare type of young onset Alzheimer's disease that I think only about 300 families worldwide have. So that's, if you have this gene passed down to you, you'll definitely have Alzheimer's disease. But the vast majority, you want to have an awareness if you have a dementia in your family, but it's not a definite thing.
You're listening to Your Family's Health on the Voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. My name is Dr. Jeanine Cook-Garard from the nursing department here at Nassau Community College. And today we're talking with Jennifer Fitzpatrick, a generations expert, gerontologist, and author of Cruising Through Caregiving, Reducing the Stress of Caring for Your Loved One. So, Jennifer, can you tell me, how is dementia diagnosed?
Well, my first thought is that you want to go to the doctor with some examples of what the symptoms are. And that's either you or your loved one comes with you and explains. And so you go to your regular physician, your physician's assistant, your nurse practitioner, whoever you see regularly for your healthcare appointments. Describe your symptoms, and a good healthcare provider is going to ask some good questions. And some of those questions might be, hey, are you taking any herbs or any supplements that I don't know about? They might ask questions like, are you under a lot of stress? How is your sleep? Because, how's your alcohol consumption? All of those can be contributing to you having issues, cognitive issues. And so a good doctor is going to have a conversation with you. And if they're not able to ascertain, hey, you know what, it really does look like maybe this med you're on is causing these problems, or they probably will do some blood and urine tests. And again, I'm saying a good healthcare provider, this is what they're going to do. And they might find that you have a urinary tract infection and you've got some delirium going on, and that mimics dementia. And so we treat the urinary tract infection and you're back to normal. But maybe we do blood and urine tests and we don't find anything. And that's when a good provider is going to, if they have experience with dementia, they might be perfectly able to follow you and order order some more tests, look at the symptoms, and say, look, it looks like Lewy body. It looks like Alzheimer's. It looks like frontotemporal. But on the other hand, a lot of providers are going to say, you know what, it's time for me to refer you to a specialist. And my favorite specialist for this, just from my experience of working with patients and families, is I like geriatric psychiatrists and I like geriatricians. Those are the ones that I think really have a great handle on really getting in there with a proper diagnosis of dementia.
So once they find out that there's no urinary tract infection or no other diagnosis that would cause the patient to have some levels of decline in their cognitive awareness or maybe lapses in memory, should we expect that a CAT scan of the head is done or any kind of those diagnostic procedures
done?
Right. So
depending on what the healthcare provider decides, there's different types of scans and imaging that they might order. Now, for some, and again, I don't want to get into an area that's not my expertise, but some providers might say, you know, the symptoms are so minimal right now, we don't know if doing a scan at this point might be going to show anything. And that does happen. So for some people, if they go in, we got to remember, somebody with Alzheimer's might live with the condition for 10 years, for 15 years. So if you're really, truly going in when you're only having symptoms 3 months or 6 months, it is possible you go for a scan and nothing shows up. So I think it's really important to, if you're going to somebody that knows what he or she is doing and it's very early, they might say it's a little bit too early for us to do a scan. That is always possible. But they can say, our working diagnosis for you is what we believe right now is that you have vascular dementia, for example.
What are some of the early warning signs that we need to look into with patients who have dementia?
So say your granddaughter just tells you she's pregnant, and you're really close to your granddaughter, and you're really excited about it, and then you forget that the next day. I try to give examples like that to folks because I want you to realize it's not that you forgot that you had a doctor's appointment. You know, things like that happen, especially if we don't write it down in our calendar, or for most of us these days, we're putting it in our phones. But for many of us, we tend to, if it's something really critical like that, or you truly forget that it's your spouse's birthday, and you've always been really good at remembering birthdays, or maybe you go to pick mom up you're going to a bridal shower, and mom is always dressed really nicely, and she's got her makeup done, and you go, and the outfit that she has on looks like it just came out of the laundry hamper. That could be a symptom. And so I think it's just important for everyone to keep in mind, it's not that all of a sudden this person is completely different. In the beginning especially, a lot of the time they're just like you and I. They can function just like you and I, but they're going to have moments. And so I've heard this story more times than I care to have heard it, but there are examples of somebody being at the grocery store, calling their spouse and saying, I don't know where I am, and I don't know how I got here. That would be a concern, and that's when you see the person who's experiencing the symptoms having awareness. I
often, as I'm driving on the parkway, I'm seeing signs, and sometimes you see it, a lost adult, and they'll give you the car license plate. Yeah. And I'm wonder, is this an adult who has dementia, who can't find their way home? That always comes across. So the silver alert is typically somebody that we either know has a diagnosis or that we suspect has a diagnosis. Yeah, so it's a very tough situation because really they're keeping somebody off of the road when they have a diagnosis is really hard. Sometimes even if their doctor has said, listen, you can't drive anymore, or even if motor vehicles has taken away your license, they forget. Yeah. You're listening to Your Family's Health on the voice of Nassau Community College 90.3 WHPC. My name is Dr. Jeanine Cook-Garard from the nursing department here at Nassau Community College. And today we're talking with Jennifer Fitzpatrick, a generations expert, gerontologist, and author of Through Caregiving, Reducing the Stress of Caring for your loved one. How would a family who has someone possibly who is the older adult, how do they begin to pull back the opportunity for their older adult loved one driving, since this is a big safety issue? And I know that for a lot of older adults, this is their sense of independence.
In the early stages, we want to get involved the doc, we want to get involved family, and let them know you can't drive anymore, it's not safe. In the very early stages, you can have reasonable conversations with your loved one. And they might not like it, and they might defy you. I mean, if that person is still got the ability to walk around and pick up a set of car keys, they very well might be out there. And the thing about it that's so tough, Janine, is you said to the doctor, yep, I understand, my memory, my judgment, my coordination, it's all going out the window, I really should stop. And then they forget that they have a diagnosis. So we have to remember that reasoning and using rational conversation sometimes can work in the early stages, but as a rule, it becomes less and less effective, and people do forget. Even if in the moment they understand and they agree, they're going to forget. We want to reduce access to a car. We want to reduce access to their ability to get their hands on keys. But I think we want to also make it so we are providing them the transportation they need, no matter, if somebody needs to be getting to their hair appointment or their doctor, what are we going to do to make sure that they get to where they need? And that is just key. It's very important. For some families, it comes down to, if you can't get it under control, that we need to look at never leaving that person alone. Yeah. In my opinion, I don't think people with any advanced dementia should ever be left alone. Mm-hmm. But can that person go to adult day? Can that person go to a senior living community where there is security, where they will be safe? So it's very hard. The thing about it is, in our country, we have rules and laws, and we have so many rights, which is wonderful. But most people with dementia, they have moments of clarity, and then they have moments where they don't understand.
What would be some tools for the person with dementia for them to cope with this issue? Are there any ways that they can begin to be independent and to assume life as usual?
So the Alzheimer's Association has some really great resources. They have support groups for people who have early stages or when they're in the earliest part, where they can connect with others who have those conditions. A lot of senior centers have those types of programs as well. But my recommendation is the person should do as much as they humanly can do in the early stages, in the mid stages. If they like to garden, great. Mm-hmm. Maybe they can't have a conversation with you about mm-hmm. politics anymore, mm-hmm. but they can still garden. They can still dance. They can still go to a concert and enjoy music. Get that person engaged mm-hmm. in doing as much as possible of the activities that they like, whatever they may be. And the issue, I think, is that sometimes families just sort of start shutting down, and they're like, all right, well, my loved one has dementia. We want to pull back from friends. Keeping that person safe doesn't necessarily mean that they have to be in the house all the time. They can still do activities that, ride a bike. If they have somebody with them, I think that's the key, is making sure somebody's with them for those activities. Also,
I'm thinking in terms of learning something new. How does that develop new synapses and allows for them to continue the stimulation neurologically?
I think that's a little bit above my pay grade. Okay. I think that there's research being done on that right now. Okay. About learning something new. But one of the things that we do observe every day with persons with dementia is when we start to let that person sort of sit in front of the television mm-hmm. and nap all day, that's where you start really seeing decline. Yeah. So whatever they can still, if they can do art, if they can listen to music, if they can watch football, if they can go watch their nephew's soccer game, anything that we can get them, because apathy and boredom is such a problem when someone has dementia.
Sure. So tell me about you and the organization, Generations Health Education. Well, how did that come to be? And tell us about this.
Sure. So we provide training and education in healthcare organizations all over the country. And we do a lot of teaching and education about dementia, about working with challenging situations in healthcare settings, with doing more with less, patient engagement, family engagement. One of the big things that we spend a lot of time helping healthcare professionals understand is the new Caregiver Act, which hospitals and healthcare organizations are to be following to try to engage family caregivers. And also, we do a lot of family education. We work with a lot of senior living and hospitals and healthcare organizations to do education for family caregivers.
That's huge, because when you're talking about someone with dementia, the family is always involved. So that's wonderful. Now, tell me about your book.
Cruising Through Caregiving, Reducing the Stress of Caring for Your Loved One. You can get a free chapter at cruisingthroughcaregiving.com and all the worksheets. So I wrote it because I wanted people who are caregiving to be able to incrementally reduce their stress. I have been in this field for 30 years, and I've seen caregivers, family, spouses, adult kids, grandkids, just completely give up their lives to take care of someone they love.
Yeah.
Your loved one deserves your love and your attention and your care, but I don't believe that they deserve everything. I think that we all know the data. If you are not sleeping and not eating and feeling overall lousy, you're not going to be as good of a caregiver. And for some, there's a chapter on how to balance caregiving and work. There's a chapter on, should I really move in with my loved one or have them move in with me? How do I look at senior living? Is that the right move for me? So the one chapter focuses on the fact that your older loved one, even if they do have dementia, they're a grown-up. And we want to never treat your older loved one like a kid, because they're, especially when someone has dementia, a lot of their behaviors can be childlike, but they are still an adult.
Yes. I guess you want to think safety, because when you do have dementia, I guess the loved ones are always saying, I don't want my mom or my dad to fall or to, wind up outside and they're locked out of the house for whatever reason. So we're thinking safety. So you talked about, should they move in with me as the caregiver? Should they? I guess it depends, or?
Yeah, Janine, it's a great question, because families ask this all the time. Yeah. It's a depends. So number one, just going to throw out a couple of things to think about. And I have a worksheet in Cruising Through Caregiving. In fact, you can get it for free on the website, cruisingthroughcaregiving.com. Should I move in, or should they move in with me? I think you need to assess, what does your spouse or partner think about it? For one, I think a lot of people make these knee-jerk reactions, and my husband and I, as much as we love our family, we always had a joke like, okay, we'll take second jobs delivering pizzas if we have to, so we can get resources, because as much as we love our parents and we love our aunts and uncles and everybody, we feel like that wouldn't be a good fit for our family to have another person in the home. Yeah. We would make sure they got care. And I think a lot of people really, because I devoted my life to this issue, I think people are surprised when I say that. That's not the only way to be a good caregiver. So there are a lot of ways, and I think you have to assess, so you have to look at it logistics. Let's say you have 3 teenage daughters, and you want to move mom into your home. Well, is she going to have to now share a bathroom with them when they're getting ready for high school in the morning? So little things like that people think, oh, well, we'll just make it work. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And I think it also, when you move your loved one in, you become the default person for everything. So if you have siblings, all of a sudden they're like, she lives at Janine's house now. I don't have to worry about this. So I don't have to weigh in. And so I think in some ways it can become really unbalanced, but I think it just depends. But I will say, Janine, for some families, it works out beautifully. Yeah. It works out great. It just depends on your individual family.
So this book, I see it as so relevant because of our population getting older and older, and we're seeing ourselves dealing with patients or people who have dementia. Do you see this story relevant, and how is it relevant to your life? Did you experience at all personally a situation, a personal story that deals with dementia?
Yeah. Oh, sure. So my whole life I've been in one way or another caregiving. So one example I can give you. So when my grandmom, this is probably 25 years ago, my grandmom broke both of her shoulders. She actually was at a football game of my cousins, fell forward, broke both her shoulders. And so my aunts, I had 3 aunts and myself, for 4 weeks, my grandmother could not use her hands, her arms, her shoulders. So think about all the things that you need those appendages for. So my aunts and I committed for 4 weeks, we would do everything for her. Mm-hmm. And so one of my aunts was with my grandmom every day during the week and every night. And then, because I lived 2 hours away, I was there Friday through Sunday. And I actually just had come out of college at that point. And I remember that those 48 hours, I could not wait for them to be over. Now, my grandmother was one of my best friends. Yeah. We got along great. But think about it. Every single tiny little thing, and I was, 23, 24 years old, food and helping her go to the bathroom. Yes. And anyway, this was a small, tiny experience in caregiving that I never forgot. And then I thought, if I was that tired at 23, 24, doing it for 48 hours, 4 weekends in a row.
Wow.
And then think about people that have a loved one with dementia, they try to do this for 10 years. Mm-hmm. And so it really gave me a snapshot. And and then of course I've had many other caregiving experiences with family members, my dad, my grandmother, my grandfather over the years. But that little experience gave me so much insight. But think about it, Janine, when my aunts and I were in that situation, we had an expiration date. We had an end date. At the 4-week mark, my grandmother was going to be able to do everything for herself again. So many families, they don't have that end point.
That's something. Tell us how we can get in contact with you. You gave us a website. Give me that website again, because I think this is useful information.
CruisingThroughCaregiving.com. You can get a free chapter of Cruising Through Caregiving there. You can get all the worksheets. The other thing I wanted to just mention is Seth Rogen, the actor, and Lauren Miller Rogen, his wife. Lauren Miller Rogen's mom has young onset dementia. Their nonprofit, Hilarity for Charity, is located in Stamford, not too far from you guys. And it's hilarityforcharity.org, and my company, along with Oasis Senior Advisors, we did a 15-week virtual book club based on Cruising Through Caregiving. You can find all 15 weeks of the sessions on Cruising Through Caregiving. They're completely free. We have experts from all types of Argentum, Alzheimer's Association, AARP. The other thing I thought you all should know is if you are on a budget, Hilarity for Charity, hilarityforcharity.org, they offer grants for persons who are taking care of a loved one with Alzheimer's or another type of dementia. You can get up to 24 hours, 6 months at a time. Wow. Now, listen, it's not, you can't give it to every single person, but apply. They are encouraging people to apply. And I think they're an amazing organization. But, I know that doesn't solve all your problems, but 24 hours a week of paid care for 6 months is a pretty significant bit of help. But I just wanted to let everybody know those 15 videos are on the Cruising Through Caregiving website also.
They're very meaningful. And thank you so much for what you do. Thank you for being here with us, Jennifer
Fitzpatrick. Thanks, Janine. It's a pleasure.
This is Dr. Jeanine Cook-Garard from the nursing department here at Nassau Community College. And we want to thank you for listening to this week's edition of Your Family's Health.
We'd like to get your feedback on your family's health. Send your comments by emailing them to whpc@ncc.edu. Podcasts of today's show are available on iTunes, Android Podcasts, and Spreaker. This program was produced at the studios of Nassau Community College in cooperation with the Nursing Department. Join us next week for another edition of Your Family's Health on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.